It's tricky to say, but I think it's relevant for any organization who's looking for ways of organizing in a more horizontal manner. It's quite easy, and I think it's quite common too that organizations, when they undergo change, talk a lot about transparency and participation. But it's quite difficult to actually achieve it in reality, because it takes a long time and a lot of effort and also a lot of cognitive resources to take into account different theories and different opinions and statements and sort of make something good out of it. So I think that any organization that tries to make an organizational change where the employees and different participants actually get to say things and co-construct the new organization. This paper is at least one way to describe how this can be achieved. And that was also what was so striking when we did all the observations, that these managers had some really interesting ways of communicating and getting people involved. I've heard many times managers in organizations talking about creating a common vision and taking a lot of voices into account. But this was a really serious way of trying to achieve this, and it gave some really good results. And I think that's maybe what made the paper interesting for others. Well, I suppose that the features, first of all, we call this way of working with sense making and influencing during change reflexive sense giving, and that sort of stressed the reflexive aspect in this. And I suppose that it comes out quite clear, those 4 features in reflexive sense giving, that is quite transferable to other organizations. What I'm talking about is the open-endedness, that the managers actually tried to avoid fixed answers. They didn't go out and said, well, this is where we are and this is where we're going to get, and this is exactly how we're going to get there. But they actually said that we have no fixed answers. And I suppose that's one way as it could be transferred to other organizations as well. This kind of approach to change, quite relaxed, saying that we don't know exactly where we're going and how we're going to get there. We know we need to make changes, but we need the competences throughout the whole organization to actually find out which ways are the best and where we're going. So that's one feature that is transferable, I would say. The other one is, we call it low control of cues given, and that's sort of a theoretical way of saying it, perhaps, where sense making is about taking in different cues and making sense of a situation, and from that position set the course to action. Those managers encouraged a low control over these cues. So what they did basically was that they allowed critical voices in the dialogue. They were not afraid of picking up things that could be tricky and ambiguous and sensitive. For example, the question of salaries or how changes had been made. So they actually really wanted to hear critical voices. And I think that's one way to say to the employees and all people in the organizations that we actually listen, and we try to handle what you think and what you feel. So it created a pretty good atmosphere, and that's also something that is transferable. And we talk a lot about values in the organization and cooperation, but this was working with those values in practice in a really constructive way, even though it actually came out some really tricky issues and stuff and sensitive stuff. But I think it was a good process. I don't know if I can say so much more than what I say in the paper, but I have hopes that this kind of literature explores similar kinds of processes as we have done, so that we actually can learn more about slightly different ways of doing this kind of change work, and also perhaps focus on what are the long-term results here. Because I mean, we saw the direct results when we did the observations and thought about it, but to actually find out what the results are from it, I would really appreciate more research to figure out and learn more about. I would be really happy if the field would produce knowledge that makes us utilize the resources better in the organizations. And I think that the police have made one contribution and showed how at least they tried to do it, and I think they did it quite well. So it's going to be interesting to follow the police further on as well and see how it turns out in the long run. It would be really interesting to do the follow-up myself and continue this region. It's unique in the sense that they are at the forefront of working with these methods for achieving change. And I haven't seen this kind of approach to organizational change before. So of course I'm really interested into following it up and see what happens with it. I can only comment that from a sort of personal viewpoint and maybe not so much theoretical but if I think about Sweden and the sort of overall culture here, where we search for a consensus, or at least trying to reach consensus, I suppose this is our culture sort of facilitates this kind of development towards this way of creating a dialogue where different voices are lifted up. That is not the same to say that it's not possible in other cultures as well. Well, maybe we are prepared in Sweden for this kind of dialogues in organizations more than others. I don't know.